think we're going to get started. You're here for the 1:30 session on tools for advising, all right? The right place. We're asking everybody to sit in the lower section. If we get more than 500 people here, you can move up to the top, but please move down if you're in the top section. Okay, so for the first tool of advising is to do calisthenics in here, to warm up. We had nothing to do with the temperature in here, but I imagine by the end of this you might be a little cold. Okay, so we have an hour. We're going to try to present the role of the advisor, some characteristics of good advising, and then tools for advising, and try to do all that within about 60 minutes. Okay, so I'm Dave Farouk. I'm the Assistant Dean for the College of Business and Public Management. I know a lot of people here in the audience that have worked either as faculty or staff librarians at the university during the time I've been here, which is about 29 years. Okay, so that's a good amount of time. And my colleague?
Hi, I'm Armina Lulegian, and I am an assistant professor at the Public Administration Department, and I'm also the coordinator for the Healthcare Administration track. And I don't know as many people as Dave because this is only end of my second year, but I know maybe a quarter of you, more or less, right?
Right. So, to get started with advising, everyone here does faculty advising? All of you? How many of you do advising regularly? And how many of you just thought this was an interesting topic? Others could care less? Okay. Well, we're going to try to help you with this. Advising is an extension of the classroom. It's a very important function. Since all of you have been to college, and many of you have been to more than one if you have advanced degrees, but I'd like you to think back to your very first experience on a college campus. Go back to that very first time, maybe it was a September, back when you were 18, 19, maybe later, I don't know, but probably just finished high school. Just think back to that very first time when you met with your faculty advisor, and how did you feel? Did you feel nervous, anxious, sweating a little bit, not knowing anything, not knowing who that person was, just seemed unapproachable? Was that person even in your major, right? Okay, so that's what a lot of our students have to face, and we'll kind of come back to that in a few minutes, okay? Armene? Learning the language here. College is a different environment. It has different vocabulary than high school students are usually exposed to, unless they have an older sibling. So the language and terminology that we use regularly, they often don't understand. If it's a freshman particularly, they might not understand it. If it's a transfer, they'll have some familiarity with it, but definitely not coming in for the first time. So a couple of questions for you. What's a semester hour? Who wants to try a definition of a semester hour? Anybody want to try it?
Oh, come on, Dave. Yeah, go ahead. Semester hour equals a credit, right? When it says 3 SH, it's 3 credits.
Credit, right. A semester hour is... Another one? Jim?
It's not an hour, is it?
It refers to the amount of contact time that a student has, or that you as faculty put in teaching, okay? But it has to be defined. Think about, again, that 18-year-old, back when you were that age, did you know what a semester hour is? Okay, Janine described it, Dr. Black described it as a credit, okay? It's a synonymous term with it, but sometimes those terms are not quite synonymous. Here's another one. Faculty. Everybody knows that, but if you're 18, you're thinking of it in terms of a teacher, right? Who is my professor? They might not really even understand what faculty, who faculty are or what they are. Next one. My professor is an adjunct. All right, is there something wrong with that person? They're an adjunct. Had you heard of that term as an 18-year-old? And our finance students, I was in the elevator in Willis, and as you know, that can be a long elevator ride. There were two finance majors talking to each other and describing the professors, and the one student said to the other, is your professor a full-time professor? And the other one says, no, I don't think he is. I think he's ad hoc. Okay, so maybe that's even more appropriate term, but they often don't know what adjunct means. Okay, so
just to add, sometimes adjuncts actually are better because sometimes we bring in expertise that we don't have in-house, right? So, but our students miss that.
Next one, a free elective. Coming to Kane, I did not graduate from Kane. Free elective, we use that term. Bit of a misnomer, right? When you're 18, is it a free elective? People think, oh, it's free, I don't have to pay for it? It's not free, it's unrestricted. Now, when we say elective, is it truly an elective? There's some restrictions on that elective, aren't there? Sometimes you can't use major courses, sometimes they have to be taken at the 3,000 level. So all of these things that you guys know and take for granted are not quite so obvious to the first semester student. And then my personal favorite, because I asked that question, have you matriculated? I asked that question my first semester at Kane, and I do not want to tell you the response I got. Okay, so terminology can be very misleading to students, in my case, embarrassing. So there's just a few things there that we want to just throw out there. So be aware of the terminology that you use, and that jargon, that college jargon, which is so familiar to your audience, your student may not understand the terms you're using. So again, with freshmen, be very careful about that. Try to define the terms for them. Okay, just get us started on a light note.
All right, so I'm going to go over, actually we're both going to go over some advising functions. And a lot of these functions are based on the work by Allen and Smith. Okay. So these are 5 main academic functions that faculty engage in, and they include integration, referral, providing information, individuation, and shared responsibility. So what I'm going to do is go over some of these in a bit more detail. In terms of integration advising, there's so many roles we have, and one of them is talking to students about their degree, right? So this will be advising students about what major to pick or what degree to pursue. Gen Ed course selection is in essence assisting students with choosing general education courses. And Major Connect is when we're helping students with choosing courses within their major, okay? These may seem similar, but in terms of the advising literature, they differentiate this. Overall Connect is when we're helping students to connect their academic, career, and life goals. And finally, Out of Class Connect, and this is when we're helping students pick activities that are outside of the classroom, such as joining a club or finding an internship.
Okay, some of the things that we talk about there, I'm going to refer to later we have an advisement handbook that for the business and public admin faculty that are here have seen a copy of that, and we'll share that with you, and it is available online. So we'll go through some of that in more detail later. Okay.
Now, referral advising. So in terms of referral advising, there are things that we do that are related to academia, and then there are things that are non-academic. So in terms of academic referrals, when there is need, we basically try to connect our students to campus resources to address problems. So some examples would include tutoring, getting help at the writing center if they have any disabilities, to make sure that they get specific and appropriate accommodations. In terms of non-academic referrals, when needed, we try to help our students address non-academic problems. Some of these include helping them with financial aid or financial aid issues. Or, if you identify a student that needs help in terms of mental health, referring them to the appropriate centers. Or if they're a veteran, we have a center that's actually in Willis Hall. So making sure that they're getting access to appropriate non-academic services.
Okay, information advising, how things work. Okay, you see all the examples there, the policies. This is so critical that you understand policies at Kane accurately. And if you don't, after reading the policy, if you're unsure, there are a lot of people here to help you. And each of the dean's offices, people like myself, we have to know the nuances of the policies, but there are many people on the campus who can help you with that. Timelines, of course, as a faculty advisor, the most important ones would be things related to the withdrawal deadlines. There are financial deadlines, add drop deadlines, graduation deadlines. You want to make sure you have an idea of those things. The student traffic in your offices will be dictated by some of those deadlines. How many people come in on the very last day to get something done. So be aware of some of that and expect increased traffic as those deadlines approach. And then many of you I know are familiar with the petitions process. Students want to get into certain courses and they'll either need to see you or the department head.
I'm just going to add something to information advising. One of the things I started doing is include a lot of deadlines in my syllabus, because I like my syllabus to be an advising tool of sorts. And so I'll put in deadlines for withdrawal, for when they need to submit for graduation. This semester I started putting in deadlines for when the grades are due, so I don't get 300 emails right after they take the final. So this way, some of this advising is done like the first day. So in terms of individuation advising, this is really trying to understand what kind of skills, abilities, and interests our students have. Of course, it's sometimes difficult to get to all of this in 5 minutes, but if you see a student who's struggling with math, yet their major is science or their major is business, maybe this is not an ability that is a strong suit for them. So making sure that we're identifying our students' skills, weaknesses, and abilities, and then trying to maximize their strengths and working on weaknesses would be an important aspect of advising.
I want to just mention something there. Actually, it is on the next one as well. We can skip to that one. Knowing them as an individual, as family. How many of you who are probably more seasoned a little bit have been invited to a wedding for one of your students? Any of you? Yeah, a bunch of you. Okay, so you've made an
Since you're talking
impact.
about a wedding, can I add something? I
Sure.
had one of my former grad students propose to one of my current students this past semester. They're getting married next year, so yes, I'm going to a wedding, my first Kane wedding.
Right, so you've made a connection there that's very strong. Hobbies, do you routinely ask them about what they like to do? All right, I have found that is a great icebreaker to get to know the student a little bit better. What are their interests? If there's a way to relate that to the major or a minor, sometimes that can be helpful as well. Many of our students work. Some of them work full-time or more than full-time. It's amazing that they can get done what they do given their work responsibilities. I know Armine works with graduate students who very typically they'll have full-time jobs. They're coming out of that to come to class. So it's important to ask some of those things. Okay, so shared responsibility. The advising part, I like to say that the student is primarily responsible for their own education. You have to take charge of your own life. The faculty advisor provides advice. If any of you went to Brian Teasdale's workshop yesterday, he made that same point. But we're there to help them. We're guiding them along the way. But ultimately, it's the student that has to be in charge of their own education. And you want them to enhance those skills, problem-solving skills, decision-making skills along the way, so that as they get to be seniors, they're really taking charge of their own affairs. Okay, a little bit about the importance of advising. I think some of you are probably sitting here and saying, oh, I already know that, I know that, I know that. That's a good thing. If you've been doing this for a while, I'd like you to mentally check off how many of these things you do yourself as an advisor, okay? Or think of these as important. Critical component of higher education. I mentioned at the beginning, this is an extension of the classroom. The students will see it that way. Those advising hours that you put in, those 8 hours a week or more for some of you, that's critical. That's shaping their experience about Kane. And I want to say, for our students, what does Kane mean to you? We could spend hours right now going through that. What does Kane mean to you? If you've been here, I don't know who's been here the longest. Is Pat Ippolito here? I'm going to guess, just looking at the audience, that Jim Capone might be close. Anybody longer than Jim? Okay. Rich? Okay. So when you two guys think about Kane, you probably have been in every building on campus. Is that right? Do you know most of the people here? A good amount? You know most of the faculty? Not anymore. Okay. All right. But you've been on every building. How many of you have been in Vaughn Ames Hall? How many of you have been in Green Lane? How about everybody's been in Center for Academic Success, East Campus? How many of you have been in all four of those buildings that I just mentioned? Okay. How many of you could give directions on how to get to each one of those buildings easily? Okay. It's really important to have an idea of our campus environment and meet as many of your colleagues as possible. When we were at lunch today, I was thinking, was remarking to someone about how this professional development day is one of those times where you get to meet people outside of your discipline. So for that reason, it's great. But it's really important to know that environment. Okay, Kane means a lot to you guys because you know everything about it. To a beginning student, Kane is the 5 professors they have that semester, okay? And maybe their roommate or their housing staff that they interact, or maybe the cleaning staff that happens to be around, that is Kane to them. That's what they know about Kane, okay? So if they get bad service from any one of those people, then Kane gives bad service. Are you guys with me on that? A student's definition of Kane is much more limited than yours. And whether they choose to stay or leave can be dependent on that level of service that they get. And I know there are a lot of other things there, but think about that. It's a critical component of higher education, that advising function. Guide students in their academic careers. Of course, you know that. You probably do that more than you know. How many of you shaped your career based on maybe a high school teacher you had or a faculty member? Changed directions of your career based on that interaction, right? Benefits to the students, many. Student satisfaction. Advising is one of the top things there for keeping the students here. I think you're going to feel good about yourselves by providing good advisement to students. In some ways, you've made life-changing contributions to them, been invited to their weddings and other things like that, promoting success and retention.
So we have a unique position as a faculty advisor. Why? Because we can serve as a guide to their overall educational and career paths. We can also be influential figures if we so choose, and I hope we all do. And research indicates, I forgot to cite this particular one, but frequent interaction makes a difference when it comes to advising for students to make connection with the faculty and the university. This is actually research that's proven by, several studies. So what makes an effective advising? So the most effective is when the process is understood. And of course, there are many different approaches as to how we engage in advising. Some of us can do either one of these as our primary role, or we can wear different hats, or we can do all of these, right? So we can be disseminators of information, we can serve as their guide to the university, to their major, we can be facilitators, and we can also be their mentors. Again, there are different approaches to advising. So some of the characteristics of an effective advisor, and Dave and I listed 7 based on previous research, are really 7, okay? So possessing the ability to disseminate accurate information. So if I get a question that I don't know the answer to, I try not to guess, because I rather find the correct information and provide accurate information to the student. That's important. I've learned the hard way, okay? And providing guidance, again, based on accurate information. And all of this would require, on our end, to be knowledgeable about the university, about the procedures, about deadlines, and the requirements. Do you want to add to
Yeah, I
this?
have a comment on that. Make sure that you understand your degree requirements for your major first and foremost. You need to be the expert on that. Okay, that was said yesterday, and I want to underscore that. You have to be the expert in your program. In other words, the student shouldn't be telling you what the requirements are. Okay, and that has happened. But you have to know your program requirements inside and out. All right, and if you don't know them, definitely talk to the department head. You need to know all the nuances of the major program requirements. You need to know the prerequisites for all of the major requirements. It's also good to know them about any supporting courses in the program. I'm going to share that at the end of the program here, something that we put together for our college, but you certainly can adapt it to your needs. And you want to know a little bit about the history of your program. So if you're a new faculty and your program has changed major requirements within the last 4 years, you have to have an understanding of the old program requirements, because you might be advising a student under an older program. They go by the requirements that they were admitted under, so you'll have to know that. You should also know any major changes to university policy. Did anybody go to the session yesterday on the changes to the never attended and what was it called? Unofficial withdrawal. That policy is changing. If you're in the classroom, that policy will come to your attention. You'll have to deal with that. You have to understand it by the fall at the latest, okay? So that's one. That's an example of something that everyone will need to be fluent on if you're in the classroom. Somebody here can correct me. I heard fall, but it could be earlier than that. Anybody remember if they said it was going to be for summer too, or? Okay, so does everybody understand the policy or not? All right, well, okay, I don't want to spend too much time talking about that, and I think I have some copies of it. You definitely want to refer that to the registrar, those questions, but basically it has to do with students who never attended would be given a grade of an AF, academic failure, in the past. Now they're gonna look to change that, I think to a nothing, right? No record, and then they have to pay a fee. I think it was $250, according to the presenter yesterday. And then for students who are attending and then stop attending after the never attended reporting, then you would give that person a grade of a UW, unofficial withdrawal, okay? Now, of course, the devil is in the details, right? When, if someone stops attending 2 weeks before the final, do they get the UW? We're going to have to work that out, and I don't want to be expert on that. But that is a policy that everyone will need to know, okay? And we'll be gaining examples of how to, what is going to be acceptable, what's not going to be acceptable. Is there going to have to be documentation? But it's a change to policy, okay? And so everyone will need to know that if that goes through. Question over here? Right, it was a faculty discretion, right, okay. So, yeah, for the full treatment of that, that'll come out, okay? But if you miss that one, that is definitely one you're gonna be wanting to know the details on, because it will affect everyone in the classroom.
I'm sensing a lot of inaccurate information.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, don't give out the wrong information, right? Okay, you wanna go? Okay, and understanding developmental? Okay. So understanding student developmental levels. I think that's important. You're going to have to realize that the students that come in as freshmen may be at a different level of understanding than your seniors or graduate students. And just kind of, as you're doing advisement, and I'll cover this later, but one of the things you want to check is where they are in their curriculum. Of course, everyone knows that, okay, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay, other characteristics is when and how to guide to campus resources. So if you have a student who's struggling with mental health, knowing or having the phone number for the student health services would be beneficial, or if somebody does not understand why they have a financial financial aid hold, helping them navigate the process or sending them to the right office if they don't know where the office is, would be, an important thing to do. Developing relationships with students. So again, attending weddings, it sounds funny, but that's an example of cultivating an effective relationship. I don't expect to attend every student's wedding. I don't expect to get invitations, but making sure that you're at least attempting to cultivate a relationship makes a difference, especially for the student. Showing courtesy and respect, treating them like adults, even if they're 18 and they're acting like, 5, or, to me, showing respect would mean commanding respect, right? So courtesy and respect are very important. Showing interest.
Yeah, I mean, for showing interest is just, everybody has got a million things that they're doing. There are a few people busier than faculty, and maybe not everybody knows that, but we are, okay? You're juggling a lot of things, and including your own personal life, your research agenda, your classes, your grading, all of the things that you do. Most of it people don't pay any attention to. A student comes in and you've got a million things on your mind, and an 18-year-old Kiwon Kim comes in and he comes in to Dr. Lim and says, I don't know what to do with my life, okay? And now she's got to decide whether she wants to give him a few minutes, which could be some of the most important time in his life, or is she just going to say, well, I don't really have time for this, okay, or come back tomorrow. It's amazing what you do if you give a little bit, you show a little bit of an interest in the students. It can be life-changing for them. Okay, remember back, as we started with it, remember back when you were a freshman, how you felt, okay, and the first time you approached a faculty member. Very intimidating for many people. You know, you're the expert. You know, in their minds, you're a genius. I mean, you know everything, okay? You're an important person in
Wait,
their
we
lives.
don't?
Well, okay, so show interest in them. That's really important to do that. It's simple, but genuine interest in their lives. They'll never forget it. Okay, and be approachable. That kind of relates to that, of course. You know, if you're a person too. It's not, I don't think it's unprofessional to tell them an interest you have, maybe, if it's appropriate interest. They see that you've got to juggle a bunch of things. You know, they might see that you have, have a family or whatever. All of those things that they have, you might have those same things that are competing for time. Yeah. Got another one? Okay. Now we have the handbook. So I have kind of a inappropriately in handbook, which is about 40 pages. So I think what we'll do is we'll leave them here, and you can pick them up if you want them. They're also available online at the Kane, on the Kane website under the College of Business and Public Management for ideas. The one that's online was this last year's version. The one that we have up here, I kind of updated it, but certainly there are going to be mistakes because I'm not a genius, and my colleagues will point out the mistakes. But here's a few things that we had in the handbook, and again, the full version is up in front. So in there we have the student responsibilities. We included that in the handbook because it is important that students be responsible for their own education. I don't know if you can read that there, but students need to meet with their faculty advisor at Kane every semester to keep them on track, kind of like a physician does. Students need to bring their program evaluation with them to the session. Do they do that with you guys? Yeah, they bring them around? Okay. Sometimes, I find a lot of times I've got to pull one up for them. Students should be familiar with a catalog. Are you familiar with the catalog? Do you guys feel familiar with that catalog? When I teach the freshman seminar, now called Transition to Kane, I do something called Kane Jeopardy, like the game show, and I use the first 30 pages of the catalog as material. So I've got categories. You can imagine the game show. Academic policies and procedures, admissions, fees, and financial aid, starts with C, general information, and I've got that, and we play it. They need to know it. If they're getting all the questions wrong, we stop the game, and it turns into a quiz. Okay, and they study. They'd rather do that. One time I gave the presentation for the GE 1000 training. I thought I would just give kind of a lecture on it, and then I thought, well, let them play the game. So on one team we had all of the students, they're the GEMs, right? I think they were called peer liaisons at that time, but the GEMs. And on the other team we had the faculty. And we had a heated battle. And the students won. Okay? So you need to know the catalog information. That was a fun way to get to know that. Students should be familiar with the departmental GPA. Of course, do you know your departmental GPA? And also, I would recommend that you know the departmental GPA for every program in your college. Is that reasonable? Because you're going to get them. Okay, you're going to get students who are, they're undecided business. They don't know whether they want to go for accounting, marketing, management, global business, finance, something in that realm. Somebody who wants to be a teacher. You need to know the basic requirements, okay? So know your realm, know your universe. And then, but students should know it, but you've got to know it first. And then students should be aware of deadlines. Again, I said earlier, do you know the deadlines? And then, let's see. Students rarely keep you updated on their progress, but they should. And of course, they should attend all classes. Now, that goes without saying, but many students skip. They're going to lose the material. Students should know prerequisites. Do you know the prerequisites on all your classes? One of the handouts I have for you, if you want it, is we've put together all of the prerequisites for the business major classes. Okay, so if someone comes in and they're going to take Dr. Ree's business statistics, all the prerequisites are there. So if you're advising on that, you can say, oh, here we go, there's the class. Did you already take pre-calculus? You want to take managerial decision modeling? Okay, here's the prerequisites. You want to take investments, finance? Okay, did you take these? So they're right there. And then, of course, taking responsibility for their education. Tips for faculty. Okay, guys, I hope you guys will pay attention to this part. Provide the level of service that you would want for yourself or your own dependents, your own kids, all right? If you can make that a goal, if you already do that, great. Okay, I try to think of every one of these students that come into my office, that could be, that could be Armane's son, or Dr. Cooper's daughter. It's that level of service, and hopefully I can come close to it.
My son is going to just open your office door and barge in. Okay, so be on time for your office hours so my son one day can barge into your office. Realize that although you have been through this process many times yourself, this could be the first time for the student, and the first time being a new experience. So again, remember, go back to that, 17, 18-year-old self and try to imagine that, this new kid or this new student is wearing your shoes. Oh, this is an important one. I think all of us remember, especially, for those of us who teach in the evenings, students have many responsibilities. Their parents, they have full-time jobs. A lot of my students have full-time jobs that have a lot of responsibilities. When they walk in the classroom, when they come to my office, I can see it on their faces. So just remembering that is super important.
Yeah, and then, the clubs, we have those on our website now. Kane actually is one of the best places to get involved in extracurriculars in their student government realm. Student Org is the umbrella organization, very easy to get involved in any student club. Recognizing the honor status of our students. When you check that program evaluation, are you seeing the cumulative GPA? Everyone here? Do you look at that regularly, honestly? You look at it, see the GPA. If it's 3.45 or higher, that means they're on track to graduate with honors. In a given semester, they should make Dean's List, okay, once a year if it's a part-time student. But you want to recognize the extremes. Recognize the honor students. We must, as an institution, I don't know if lightning is going to strike me, but I'm going to say this. We must keep our best students at Kane. Okay, if we're losing our best students, we are in trouble as an institution. I don't want our Dean's List students, and Dean Cooper's here, my boss, I do not want our Dean's List students transferring to another school. Okay, I'm sure you don't either. We have to keep the good ones here. Now, on the other end of the GPA spectrum, you want to pay attention to people who have below 2.0. I know there's some people in the audience whose job it is to watch those students, okay, in particular. But everybody has to be attuned to a student that falls below 2.0. They're going to be on probation, or if that continues, they will be on the dismissal list. And they will get a nice letter. If they're in the College of Business, they'll get one from Dean Cooper in a couple of weeks, okay, that says you have been dismissed. There's no worse correspondence you can get than a dismissal letter that I can think of, okay? And so we want to try to catch those students early on, maybe suggest remedial work for them, tutoring, things that to bring them back up out of jeopardy. And then the students that are in between, but haven't met the departmental minimum to declare the major, you want to be attuned to those. So I'll give another example. Accounting, Jim, it's 3.0, right? So the accounting majors, we got a lot of accounting wannabes. They have below 3.0. They can't declare the major. Well, if they've got 120 credits and they're still not able to declare the major, we've got a big problem, okay? So we've got to pay attention to those wannabes, the ones who are falling below the departmental minimum, okay? So there's a lot there. For our college, of course, visit the website regularly. We try to keep that up to date now. Occasionally, my colleague Jean Brown was here, but she deals with retention of the students in jeopardy. That's a little bit of a shout out to her there, but if you have those difficult cases with somebody on probation, you might want to refer them to her office. If you really get somebody that really needs psychological help, you think, of course, refer them to the counseling center, okay? I had a student in a couple of weeks ago who, she said, you know, she wasn't going to classes. In fact, she had a lot of difficulty just getting out of bed every day. Okay, so that's a depression. It could be something worse than that. So, referral.
So one of the things that I learned that's not in here during this process, working on the slides with Dave, is the 30, 60, 90. Do you want to tell them about that? Because that was very helpful to me.
Yeah, 30, 60, 90. So if we want students to graduate in 4 years, they've got to be basically finishing 30 credits a year. You know that, right? So if you want to keep people on track with that 30, 60, 90 to get in 4 years. The president has made that comment about an extra year of tuition, an extra year out of the job market, how much it'll cost them in that. So try to keep them on that if their life allows it. And the last thing is to share your expectations on career and research opportunities and internships you might know of. This is where students, and I did work on this, okay, as a graduate student, on advisement delivery systems, and students feel most comfortable and trust the information most from faculty on career-related information. You are the experts on that. Okay, that information you give them, they will take to heart. Okay, in our handbook, we have the descriptions of all of the majors in our college, just so that you can be a little bit fluent in some of those related programs. Yep. So you see them there. And there I see, Dean Cooper, I see I left out global business. I'll have to add that. And we also have minors in all of our programs except for global business.
Global business was included.
Okay. We have some frequently asked questions that we put in the handbook. Let's see here. Okay, I'm not going to go through all those, but hopefully you know those. And what I would recommend is if you have ones that you get all the time, you might want to add that to your own handbook, okay? And for our college, direct those to me. You should know the class standings. Armine mentioned about the 30, 60, 90. You can see those are the registrar or financial aid definitions of class status. It's almost 30, 60, 90. But you should be somewhat aware of that, I guess. Okay, and then Dean's List 3.45, easy to remember. Honor status. We talked about good standing. Does anybody here advise graduate students? Okay, you know about graduate students have to keep the 3.0. They can't do grade recalculation, which is one of those ones that it's like an advanced question. If you retake a graduate course, you have to keep both grades. And then transferring credit, you can see that there. We have in our handbook the requirements to declare the major for all of the programs. Again, this is meant as a reference for our faculty. You can see that's not something that maybe that would be on the tip of your tongue to remember all those requirements, so it is there. All of the programs, I think we've got it. And then I put together a course sequencing sheet to lay it out visually on, you know, kind of what comes before other classes, and some people like that. Others find it too difficult to read, but works for some people. Finance, same thing. Marketing, management. Dr. Reed, do you know that one off the top of your head? You know all those? Oh, Dr. Black knows it? Okay, good. Criminal justice, and public admin, more of a flat structure there to that degree. And the references that Armine mentioned earlier on the studies that we use today. Okay, and that's it. You guys make a difference. You really do. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Any questions for us? I got one question for you guys. What do I have in common with Jerry Garcia and Jay-Z? Do you know? You walk? Performed on this stage.
Very good. More than a question, one of the things that was left off there, what is of great interest to students, is getting overloads. And I believe different majors and different colleges have different policies with regards to how to appeal for an overload.
Right, good. Okay, so it's things that are departmental related, you want to make sure you've got that clear. I was giving an example of our handbook, but certainly other colleges, yeah. And there are some that are departmental specific or school specific. So just be aware of those. That's good. Thank you. Other questions? All right. Too cold? You want to move? Okay. All right. Thank you for coming, guys.
Thank you for coming.
Good. Enjoy. Handbook's in front if anybody wants one.